Good to have you here.
Pleasure to be here.
This year is said to be a year of economic downturn globally. But the best part is that India remains at a very bright spot right now.
So it seems, yes.
That's right. How do you look at ad spend, marketing budgets right now? Do you somehow feel the decision makers in the marketing segments kind of restraining themselves, kind of holding the budgets back? How do you look at this?
I think it's a mixed bag this year because it's true that India seems to be sticking out and seems to be sort of bucking the trend. But whenever that happens, people are fearful as well that they're worrying that there must be some headwinds, which global headwinds will come and hit us as well. So I think people are balancing between both. There's fear and there's greed. So it's right now all up in the air because India is doing very well. Lots of people want to feel confident in their spending, but they're also spending in a very variable form. They're not committing long term. They're not committing 6-9 months out into the year. They're doing 3 months at a time. Is the sense I have.
That's right. And first half of the year was very difficult. And do you somehow feel the second half of the year will be kind of the on the high, and the budgets will come back very bullish?
It's difficult to say honestly. Typically, obviously, festival season does tend to pick up relative to the previous few months. So that should play out. The big thing, however, is that India needs to continue to buck the global trend of both inflation and recession. And if that stays the way it is right now, I think we'll see very good spending.
Going on to my next question, how do you look at the ratio going on between the digital and the legacy media? It's the ever going on question, but how do you look at it right now? Because we know that digital is taking the main stage right now, and most of the given that the consumer base is Gen Z, millennials, most of them, and the higher penetration, the access to data is much more higher right now. How do you look at the ratio of the spend?
I think what we are seeing is directionally, what you're seeing is that mainstream television is ending up being strong and powerful for live content like sports, for example, news to some extent. But if it's, for example, entertainment content like fiction and so on, then we are seeing a shift of consumption towards digital, and arguably some of the advertising spend will also follow it. There's of course lots of digital media, but there's no advertising even today, so there is no access. So then what do you do? So, but I think with all the live content that is becoming available, cricket itself, there is tons of cricket available. There's other reality content. There's still plenty of juice available in television, mainstream television. Therefore, I think that we overstate the case that digital is now consuming what used to be on television. Certainly, print media has always had a challenge, and COVID didn't help also. So that I think is certainly a place where there is concern, which will continue to be a problem.
I understand. I understand. Before we go forward to talk about some of the trends that are long-term and short-term, both in nature, let's talk about technology. How is it playing a very critical role? And also, when we look at the role of CMOs being evolving and coinciding with driving the business outcomes directly, how do you kind of look at generative AI coming into play and kind of enhancing the work CMOs have been doing right now? How do you see that the technology in some way or the other will impact the role?
Okay. So I think the positive way it will impact the CMO's role is that the CMO's always been hamstrung on the supply side, where if we wanted to experiment with variations on a theme, if we wanted to try very small cohorts and multiple expressions of the communication, etc., the supply side had a constraint before. Generative AI probably will allow us to do those experiments also at scale now. As an illustration, from way back when my time, if we wanted to try out different communication, we had to create what we used to call animatics. We had to create an animated version of the ad. But even that was laborious, time consuming, and money consuming. Today, with generative AI, I can create 50 variations at very low cost, at very high speed. I can throw that out into different test cohorts. I can figure out what's working best, and then I can spend my big monies on producing a version of that for IPL or whatever it is. So that's on the positive side. I think the downside risk I see with generative AI is currently it's a toy with the agencies. So people are fooling around with it, and most of what I'm seeing feels very gimmicky. For example, and I know that I will get probably trolled for saying this, but the national anthem video we all saw with the leaders, our freedom fighters, and our great leaders, while sure it's national anthem, so we'll all get goosebumps, and sure watching Mahatma Gandhi appear to lip sync to our national anthem does make us sit up and take notice. But as soon as you see that it is soulless because the eyes can never be human, you see the eyes are blank, that I feel that there is a subliminal residual negative, and therefore in that sense I don't see generative AI being able to replace what is core to us, the humanness that is about us. Therefore, I don't see that this kind of gimmickry will be sustainable in the long term. I think, but we are playing and we are fooling around and we are learning. So it's a journey, and we are very early in that journey right
That's
now.
right. Most of the advanced technologies and Gen I, when we talk about it, it's still naive. It's very
Very
nascent in
nascent.
age,
Yeah.
and also kind of it will kind of continue to evolve for the better reason. We know that these are smart technologies, but we need smarter brains to kind of navigate that and use that for the better reasons.
Absolutely. And there has to be a relevance to the use. I'll give you an example. We were talking about Gen Z earlier in the room. When the oldest Gen Z human being was 1 year old, India had its first 3D film called Chota Chetan. You may not be old enough to know about it, but
I've read about it. Yeah.
right. And we are today 25 years later, how many real 3D applications have we seen by brands or even in business? There are a few, but it's taken 25 years and we are still about beginning to explore 3D in a meaningful way. Therefore, generative AI, give it time.
True. I agree. I agree. You mentioned something about the agencies. How are you looking at the relationship with the agencies? Will it kind of get impacted with the AI coming in?
Um, I think one thing that will happen is new types of agencies will come up because, in my observation, typically ad agencies have been relatively slow to adopt technology. So it's some uh, digital upstarts who generally leap to the opportunity first and they capture the space first. Agencies over time either acquire those skills or they acquire those entities itself, and that's how they go along with it. That is on the one hand. Um, Clients will push, clients will demand, and therefore agencies will step up to the plate. And that's also why agencies will start to learn these skills and experiment with them, etc. So both those things will happen. And unfortunately, the tragedy is that everyone will be wanting to produce something in generative AI for Cannes next year, and that will create a lot of rubbish. So that will also happen.
Lovely, lovely. I liked it the way you put it. Um, we know that it's a competitive space, very cutthroat. I mean, everybody needs to be in the first place, everybody to get noticed and get the attention from the customers. What are some of the major short term as well as the long term trends, if I can quote them as trends, you look that will stay for long, that will kind of derive the momentum across the marketing ecosystem?
We've said this again in many sessions here itself. I think the real long-term trend that will always stay is great storytelling, because that's what really fundamentally differentiates human beings from any other species. It will differentiate us from AI also, as far as I'm able to see. I also can't see forever, obviously. So that I think will be the long-term trend that will sustain us as a species and as a race, and it will sustain, I also mean in a feeding the soul sense of the word, and therefore also business, etc., etc. Short term things, I think I'm not interested. They will come and go, and we have to play with them all, and there'll be cycles, and in the larger sense it doesn't matter.
We kind of continue to redo it.
Yeah,
redo
we'll
our
iterate,
look
we'll play with whatever is new, whatever is flavor of the season. We will all engage with it inevitably. Some of it, a lot of it will be wasted money. We are all seeing, for example, metaverse in a sense has come and gone. But I think we were stupid to overthink metaverse, but B, we are also stupid now to write it off. Because technology changes really happen very slowly. The real value of technology comes over decades, not over days. So both things are wrong. To overestimate its value in the short term and to underestimate its value in the long term.
Good to know. Good to know. Before we actually close, Karthi, any advice, any tips, tricks, or maybe in a better word, I can use advice, you would like to give to the younger and the potential marketers that are coming up?
Um, Stay curious, stay open minded, learning, and most of all, be kind.
So
So
stay agile and be kind. Yeah.
stay agile and be kind.
Good
Yep.
to know. Good to know. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for
joining.
having me.
Thank you.